persuasion ability. But ideally, ideally we have 2 or 3 or 4 in this case. So I don't expect anyone here to pull out the checkbook and make that happen, but I think it's important for anyone who's interested or involved in the campaign to understand, where we're at and where we need to be and what it really takes to get there, because hosting events, bringing potluck items, telling your friends all helps, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, in our current system, in our current civil society, without the money, there's nothing I can do. I can scream and run and fight and yell, but without the money, it's not going to be enough. So that's enough about that. A little bit more about me, for those of you that don't know. My name is Paul Chikalian. I'm 32 years old. I own a craft distilling company. Thank you, Joshua Tree Distilling, for some of the beverages tonight. It's a 1% for the Planet business. I started that business with the goal of giving back more directly to my community. Before that, I worked as a scientist at NOAA. I quit with no notice during Trump's first term because they asked me to take down a Bernie Sanders button. And that was kind of the last straw. I had been feeling for quite a while that the science I was doing wasn't being used by policymakers and therefore wasn't a great use of taxpayer money or my time. But I wanted to be an academic to try and improve the world I lived in. And so I decided that maybe the simplest and best way to improve the world I live in is if I own some means of production, pay some people well, have some good jobs, sponsor the local parade and the Boys and Girls Club, and if I really make it big, I can fund some campaigns and do something more. But at the very least, this might be a more direct way to get that. So that's why I started the business. Before I was an academic, I was a student. I did my PhD at ASU, I did my master's at Columbia, and my bachelor's at Evergreen. I have a bachelor's in philosophy and sociology, a master's in pharmacology, and a PhD in environmental science. So very interdisciplinary. Before all that, I'd been expelled 3 times. I turned 14 in juvenile hall. Spent a couple years living in wilderness boarding schools in Oregon. That's where I got an appreciation for the outdoors and backpacking, and I had to bow drill fire every morning for quite a while. So I've had an interesting life. I grew up to an immigrant community, Armenian immigrant community in Southern California. Most of my relatives were Republican. All of my relatives were small business owners. I grew up working in my parents' bookstore from the time I was 13. And also then helping my stepdad with his business, and all my cousins own trash routes or production studios or floral shops, rented apartment buildings, and so I always believed as a kid in the America that my grandparents experienced, where they came here as refugees, they bought homes, they raised kids, they got second homes, they had nice lives, they had retirements. We had lots of cousins and godparents that had become multimillionaires, owning garbage routes with 4th grade education. And so I really believed that American dream. And then I saw Al Gore lose, even though he won. And I was kind of curious as like an 8 or 9-year-old. It was odd. And then I saw 9/11 happen, which was just bizarre. But I was still pretty young, so it didn't impact me the way it might have if I was a little older. But it was, I could tell the weight of it, right? And I could see and feel all the changes that started happening. Because I might have been a little kid in the 90s, but the vibe in this country changed. And it has never come back. And it didn't take long as I started growing up as a millennial post 9/11, which is, for what it's worth, why I ended up in juvie. Because all of a sudden, if you had a pocket knife at high school, you were a terrorist, not just a 14-year-old boy. So I started to experience both firsthand and just sort of indirectly those cultural changes. And my uncles and my parents and my grandparents and the way they talk about their childhoods and the potato cannons they made and the go-karts they rode and the guns they shot and the things they did sure didn't seem a lot like the world that I was living in. But no one really seemed to be acknowledging that. And so there was some dissonance there and some frustration there and confusion there. And that's what really got me interested in social sciences and politics and figuring out like what is this crazy system that's in this world we're in? And how do we get it back to where we want it to be? And it was pretty clear to me in college that we couldn't just put yourself in like bootstraps. That the world wasn't the image that we all had of America from the 50s and 60s and 70s. That wasn't how we did it. started to see some serious problems, and that's when I became a Democrat. Started to get involved in politics, started to do more protesting, a little bit of organizing. When I was at Columbia, I organized for Bernie. Nothing like Derek did, but I hosted a couple sort of, I said they were study sessions, on campus, but I invited half of Harlem to come watch Bernie on a Zoom call and that kind of thing. And then at ASU, I helped found the DSA chapter there. That kind of was born out of a book club that I started. And I did some work with Unite Here, the union. And then took that job, came to Joshua, started my family, and was mostly out of politics. I got really frustrated when Biden got elected. I felt like the party wasn't listening again. I thought Trump was going to win again. And I just needed to focus on myself. And I was almost 30 with a bunch of debt. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to own a home. I knew better than most how hard it was to get by, how screwed you were if you didn't have means. And I was like, I'm not going to have spent the last 10 years studying sociology and politics and economics and then not use that information to try and put my own life vest on. And so I started the business. And I had my kids, married my wife. She finished residency. And we're just now starting to get to the other side where we have a little bit of security, a little bit of comfort. And that's right around when Trump got reelected. And I said, okay, I think I could get back again. I think it's time. The stakes are really high. I've sort of gotten myself in order. I can't just be disengaged. And so I reached out to some consultants, folks. I reached out to Derek, and we put together a campaign. I'm new to all of this. I'm finding that about the only industry more difficult, frustrating, and impoverishing than the liquor industry is politics. So I've chosen two incredibly onerous industries, both full of lawyers and a lot of people telling you what you can't do, which I've never taken well to. But I think that that's the kind of leadership we need, and I think many of you will be talking about that. And it frustrates some people. I have never been willing to pay my dues. I don't believe in that. I think it's preposterous. I think whoever has the best ideas and can articulate them the best and can convince the most people to agree with them, that's what we should do. I don't care if you're 5 years old or you're 50 years old. There's a 5-year-old that makes a really great point, we should listen to it. And I think that I aspire to live in a meritocracy, truly, not just one that we pretend is a meritocracy. I aspire to live in a country that lives up to the values that we all have, of compassion, of being good neighbors, of treating others the way you want to be treated, of being good stewards for our environment, of being tolerant, not just of gay people, which I have many in my family, I love dearly, close friends, or black people who historically were treated in ways that are hard to even imagine without bursting into tears. So I recognize these horrors. But we also need to be tolerant of rednecks, people who drive diesel trucks and like to roll coal because they think it looks cool to see a bunch of black smoke coming out of their tailpipe, right? Like we find it ridiculous and it's bad for the planet. But can we just acknowledge the childish wonder that we all might have had at one point that like maybe it looks kind of cool to see a bunch of smoke come out of a hot metal pipe? And we don't need to vilify these people and call them Nazis just because they have like different interests or maybe perhaps a different emotional maturity level, right? And so I think we need to get back to being tolerant and actually practicing that tolerance, because without the ability to really see our neighbors and really see our compatriots and understand them and listen to them, we're never going to have a democratic mandate, which means we're never going to have power again, which means we will continue to live under an autocratic, corporatist dictatorship for perhaps the rest of the time, the way things are headed. And I know that sounds hyperbolic and hysterical, but I really do think that's how things are headed. And that's why I don't mind who gets mad at me or who I upset. I am going to advocate for the world that I think is best, that I know is possible. And if people agree with me, please come along. And if they don't, then I'll fail, and that's okay. I'll be just fine. But I'm going to do my best to build the world that I want to see, that I know in my heart and in my gut is where we need to be and what we need to have. And so if you agree with my vision, please help. And if you don't, God bless you. That's completely okay. But that's sort of it. That's the pitch. But I'm happy to take some questions.
I love the Bernie button, and I campaigned for Andrew Yang, and a lot of things that you said really resonated with me. Have you looked into the Forward Party?
could. I mean, the truth is that I think the odds of winning at the federal level not as I mean, even Bernie registers as a Democrat every time he decides to run for president. Switches back. So.
I'm just saying, can we get some money from them?
Yeah, I'll look into it. I'll look into it. No, I'll take money from the Republican Party. Money's green. I'll take it. But I think in terms of like my registration and my party is the issue. I think it's going to stay a Democratic campaign. I mean, the reality
is they endorse R's, D's, and I's. As long as you meet the criteria.
Yeah. We should reach out to them.
Okay,
for sure.
I will get on.
For sure. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yeah.
So I've noticed, at least through my observations of politics over the last decade, a lot of people come into the Democratic Party and they talk a big game, and they talk about a lot of these progressive things they want to do, things they want to change, and as soon as they get in office, they kind of bow down to the whim of the Democratic Party as a whole and rescind a lot of those policies. Is there something that you would do different to actually try to push progressive policy and not just bend and fold to the rest of the older politicians?
Definitely. I'll say two things. One, I'm a big structuralist. I mean, if you haven't figured that out already, we have to address structural problems at the structural level. We have to think long term. So, and I believe in the structure. Like, if we say we're a pluralistic meritocracy democracy where the majority rules, then we should honor that, right? So I'm more than happy to piss people off, break procedural rules, do whatever, but I will honor the root, the platform, the structure that we all agreed to, the rules of the general social contract. So if there is something where I feel like there is a democratic lowercase d mandate, the majority of the country does want this to happen, but any party, whatever party, any special interest group is standing in the way, I will not shy away or back down from advocating and fighting for that position which is right and which is desired and wanted and believed in by the majority of the country. Now, I also have wanted to make the best possibility of effectuating change. And so does that mean I'm always going to be screaming at everybody all the time and handcuffing myself to the Senate, to the House floor? No. But I have no interest in being in Congress just to be in Congress. To be honest, it sounds like a horrible job. You have to fly back and forth to each other side of the country all the time. I'll never get to see my kids. They don't make a lot of money considering how much work they have to do. You're constantly asking people for money, which is neither comfortable or enjoyable or especially rewarding. Because it's just awkward, right? And it's not how it should work. So I have no interest in being in Congress just to be in Congress. And a lot of people ask me, you should run for the state house. You know, it's a big thing. Obernoffy's entrenched. It's an R+8. Why don't you run for the state ledge? And I said, I have zero desire to be in Senate. I would be one of a huge caucus of Democrats, 90% of which all think the same, see the same thing, want the same things. My voice would be absolutely meaningless. What I find appealing about Congress is that it's on such a knife's edge right now, which is really unfortunate for what that says about our country. But because it is on such a knife's edge, one legislator can actually, one legislature can be decided to vote. People will need my vote as soon as I get there. And I plan to harness that leverage, that power, to advance the interests of the nation. And if that means I'm a two-year congressman, that's fine if it meant I actually got something done. I'd much rather be there 2 years and pass even one piece of legislation that I feel good about than be there for 20 years and just have my name as the 10th author on 5 things that make business as usual.
Talk a little bit about supposed to make people I read some of your stuff on your website. I know you talked about addressing affordability.
Yeah, for me, I think, again, it goes to the big picture. We got to look at this country like, that sounds right-wing and stupid, but bear with me. Look at this country like a business. It's like, we need to invest for the long-term growth of the business. We need to have a vision and a plan and a growth strategy for where we want to be. You know, like right now we're a boutique tire company, but in 20 years we want to be the next Michelin. And how do we get there? And so I see the same thing where we think too short term, gotta think bigger picture. And so when it comes to something like fixing wealth inequality, I think we have to attack it structurally and acutely. So we have to help people acutely now because they're getting driven out of their homes, they're becoming homeless, they're going into poverty and destitute. We also need to make sure that in the long term we have a system that's set up well where people are sufficiently motivated to participate in society and work and contribute and give back, but that also fairly reward them, that keep them safe in their jobs and all the rest, all the standard democratic values. But it's just become so skewed and so broken, and it's not working for anybody. It's not working for the unions. It's not working for anyone except for the biggest corporations and examples. And so I'm very fully on board with universal child care because again, that is going in the long term going to cause net value increases to our GDP. Allowing people to have their kids taken care of without that being a financial burden on them directly, subsidizing that, will net benefit our GDP in the long term. Not only because you'll get those people back in the workforce, but also because we have a birth crisis. And we're not going to have enough workers in 10 years. And so a very simple way to help have more kids be born is to subsidize childcare. So, and it's the same with healthcare. So, as probably everyone here knows, we spend about 5 times as much on healthcare and have about 5 times more health outcomes as most individuals. So again, that's just a good investment. It's not a handout. It's not welfare. It's just a sensible way to run a country, a business, however you look at it. And so I think there's some of these things that are very, very simple, where the numbers line up, and the only thing standing in the way is, in my opinion, is big special interest groups, is big vested financial interests. It's pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, or just cruel and unkind and unfair conservative philosophy that says something like, universal child care is the handout, or is it's too compassionate. And that's where I think we need to call them out and say, you are being cruel, you are being unkind, you are being unchristian, you are being un-American when you vilify and talk down to and malign your neighbors who are doing their best to help. It's not just bad policy, it's not just a bad talking point, it is a mean thing to say. And we just call it out on those terms. And because I think we've let them get away with this narrative that it's some sort of personal failing if you need help. And we all need help, especially in this. And that's the job of government, is to help. That's why we all get told.
I'm Ralph Selmy. I'm a political scientist and a retired university professor. You alluded to just now the question of vilification that's ongoing, and person tax and those kinds of things. We need to get to the brass tacks here in that Obernoti's the target. He follows closely the Trumpian line. How do you suggest, or what is your plan? I understand, or I'm reading between the lines that you want attacking. How do you suggest your constituents, our 23rd Congressional District, Democrats and Independents, also pursue a similar line? It can happen in a small school setting, it can happen almost anywhere. But there seems to be a problem that no one wants to talk to each other, and that seems to me to be desiccating, tearing apart the community structure. So how are you recommending to people? I know how I do it, but how do you recommend people sit down with a Republican and try to show them their ways without attacking them?
Yeah, for sure.
This has to be attacked.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just what I said earlier. You have to see them. You have to empathize with them. If you can't empathize with your interlocutor, there's that old adage: if you don't have something nice to say, don't say something at all. For me, it's like if you can't empathize with the person you're talking with, don't interact. You're never going to be persuasive. You're never going to get through. The conversation might not even make any sense because you're going to be talking past each other. So that's it. You need to first ask a lot of questions. Before you make a lot of assumptions about why your Republican family member thinks what they think, you should ask a lot of questions. once you really understand why they think what they think, then you will be in a position where you might be able to actually engage on those issues and those underlying values. And you might find that we agree on the values, most of the time, big values. I have a Republican in Yucca Valley that's thinking about endorsing the planning commission, and big Republican financial conservative, and he agreed that that Oberyn LT is bad. Doesn't say what he says he's for, doesn't do what he says he's for, isn't responsive, and he agreed that we agreed that you should be able to work at the supermarket for 20 years, be a manager there, and have maybe not a mansion and a Mercedes-Benz, but like a life of dignity where you don't have mold or a leaky roof and you have food and all the rest. And I said, okay, so we agree on that, which is why I think we need to tax the rich in so many words. And he's like, well, I don't think that's the cause. I think the cause is printing too much money and inflation and all this rest, right? But it's like, but we had that agreement. We agree about the world we want to be in. And so then it's like, and then we talked through our different ideas of how to solve it, and we didn't necessarily see eye to eye, but then it's not as big of a leap of faith to say, okay, we might disagree on the fix, but if we agree on the problem and we agree on where we want to be, I'm just asking you to trust me to get us to that place. Like, that's like, if you don't like Jay and you're open to supporting me, don't worry about the methods in the process. We agree on where we are now and where we want to be. Trust me to get us where we both want to be. And so I think like that's how we have to engage. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I want to say, when you spoke to the clubs, we kind of got off the candidate topic and talked about how to talk to people. I thought what you said was amazing. I really liked the way you handled that, and I struggled with that. So we want classes next year to teach us how to talk to people if we're going to be canvassing or if we want to get the word out. But that's not soon enough. So I'm wondering if we could do a podcast with you, something on tape where if I could have the club, everybody could listen to it and not have to wait till next week. And I believe there's a podcast, I think the new building that they're building here that they just finished, that one that caved in that was circular.
Theater.
Yeah, I think they're going to be doing podcasts there, and I'm wondering if we could get you in there to discuss this and get it on tape, or we can get it out to everybody.
Yeah, I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything within my ability.
I'm gonna look into that.
For what it's worth,
That would be
I'm not like an expert. I'm not a psychologist. I never even took a public speaking class, so everything I say take with a grain of salt. But I'm always happy to just give you my opinion and my perception.
If I could add to that, you could also include video when you create the podcast as well, because you can tape the podcast and then go in after the fact and edit in examples and different things like that that can also help people, just like a little video class of sorts.
I will say just on this topic of Republicans, it is, and I say this like as a declarative, it is a requirement of lowercase d democracy that we are able to talk to our neighbors without getting upset. Yeah. Like, it is a requirement. And like, if I am going to be your candidate, this is something I am going to demand of you. And I think we have like too few leaders in this country that are willing to demand things of their followers, of the people they govern, and it is a two-way street. And I expect our leaders to take responsibility, help us all succeed, give back, but I also expect them to lead and have some moral authority and moral clarity. And so if I am elected to be one of your leaders, that is my expectation for our citizens, is that we are able to listen and talk and converse with each other, hear ideas we don't like, and not get angry, mean, and upset. I have experienced those flaws and those problems in Democratic and Republican spaces. And I think it's important to remember that we just have. This whole democracy thing won't work if we're not able to hear ideas that we find abhorrent and not resort to name calling and stomping and shouting and yelling.
I mean, there is a place for that in some ways, but
if somebody is personally attacking you,
right.
stomp and yell and shout and smack them upside the head. But
I
if
do
you're
have to
talking
say,
about
like,
ideas,
Rosemary, we were at a protest and this guy was arguing with a bunch of people and he was leaving and we were just walking in. She stopped to talk to him, and first she said she was an independent, so she totally lied. And then just to get him on the same
I
page,
just
like,
registered for holidays.
I know. It was amazing. And she talked to him, and he was like all happy when he left. The two of them were agreeing, and it was amazing. So
But I mean,
it can be done.
I hate to keep talking about Andrew Yang, but he's the one who launched me into politics. His motto was humanity first. And I have to give Andrew credit. He knew how to talk to the other side, and that's what I admire about him. So if I was successful at all, it was what you said. You meet them with your listen. But I love humanity first. We have to get back to humanity.
But if you say I'm a Democrat, then there's already a wall.
I don't think it says that I'm a Democrat anywhere on my website.
Paul, I just wanted to ask a question about, I know if you're successful, you'll be, the first timer. And so I want to ask you, who in the current leadership in the House do you respect? Who do you think you're willing? I mean, you've got to follow some. You're going to be part of the.
Come in, don't worry. I'm just saying a few remarks, but very kind.
So talk about how you become a newbie.
Yeah.
And have some
Well,
influence.
historically, I'm pretty bad.
I mean, you and I talked about John Fetterman in the Senate.
Organizations by following positioning rules. That's not my strong suit. So it might be a little bit of a bumpy start in Congress, but I find my people wherever I am, and they realize that I'm genuine.
But who are they? Have you looked forward? If you were to win,
As you know, there's a lot of people in the House.
who do you like?
AOC comes to mind. I think she's done a deft job of navigating between the more activist and more practical roles. But obviously, she just comes to mind because she gets a lot of media attention, right? There's 100 names of House representatives I don't know. Because I was busy learning the names of all the characters on Bluey and learning the names of all my vendors at the distilling company, and there's just only so much. So I've been asked this question before, and the truth is, I probably have 6 or 7 names to even sift through right now to give you the answer. I'm not modeling anybody. I'm doing me. I am offering myself up to lead. I'm not trying to be anybody else. I don't know who I'm going to find there, but everywhere I've ever gone, whether it's Oklahoma, Arkansas, Arizona, New York, Washington State, Oregon, always found my people.
Okay. But you don't want to name anybody.
I honestly probably only know the name of 6 or 7 current House members.
Okay.
I mean, AOC is the only one that comes to mind. He's in the Senate. Yeah. I mean, if we're counting the whole Congress,
How
then
about Jasmine Crockett? I brought her up.
yeah, I'm not very familiar with it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, look, I focus on people I can vote for, and I focus on overall policies and overall
Well, when
decisions.
you get there, I think you'll be impressed.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, there's Primula Jayapal I'm having dinner with in a couple weeks, and I know Tammy through some family friends, and I met Pete and Mark and stuff kind of through doing this, but or not, I don't like. If I get the job, I'll figure out who's in what cliques and who I convince in which ways to do what I need, and I'll figure it out then. But I got way more stuff I gotta focus on.
As for Jasmine Crockett, she is the one who told Marjorie Taylor Greene that she had a bad built bleach blonde bush bun.
I like Ruben Gallego, but just from what I know from the news, he was my state rep when I was in Arizona. But I might hate him when I meet him in person.
I also find it important not to put people up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Don't try to base your values off of everybody else. Develop your value system yourself on what you hold near and dear, because sometimes those heroes that you put up on a pedestal, they don't turn out to be who you think they are.
I'm a firm believer that this country was meant to be and will perform best when we have representatives who are not career looking. You should have a skill, a job, a life, a family, be fully ingrained in normal society, and then go do your time governing, and then go back to normal society. Because if you don't have skin in the game that way, it ends up like this.
About term limits.
Yeah, I'm actually endorsed by a U.S. term limits pact. I'm for term limits in all offices. Sorry. If I had a magic wand, I might tweak some of the, 2 years is too short if you're having to fundraise because then all they do is fund. It's all interconnected. If you have public campaign financing, then maybe 2 years is just fine. At any rate, yeah, it's insane that people are in the Senate for 30 years. It's even more insane that you're in the Supreme Court for 50 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned you had some courses in philosophy. I'm curious then to help these folks out and who you look at in terms of a leadership, a leader.
Philosophically?
Yeah, philosophically, a little bit back into history a little further. I mean, is there a Supreme Court justice? What I'm trying to get a handle on is where you're coming from in terms of school of thought.
I've been interdisciplinary my whole career, as I said. I mean, there's things about Wittgenstein that I think are pretty fascinating and interesting, and there's also things about Hegel that are kind of interesting. And there's also things about John Stuart Mill and Dewey. And I mean, I've never been good at picking a favorite in anything. Favorite color, favorite food, favorite toy you got for your birthday. I think one of my favorite things to do is to think about all of the ways that there's similarities and different. Well, oftentimes we use the same language. We use different language to discuss the same things. You see it in religion all the time. Right? Like I'm agnostic, but there's different religions that have like very similar stories, and very similar deities, and like I think that's really interesting. And like, how do I pick one or the other one? From my eye, they're kind of the same, right? Like in their structure. And so that's kind of how I feel about a lot of philosophy. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of representatives.
Well, you're making me nervous because I agree with you 100%. That's what I am.
My school of thought is, like I said, I think democracy is the best government system we've invented yet. If we had a really, really benevolent, great dictator, I might not mind it. It sounds like it'd be a lot less work, but we don't. And I think meritocracy makes a lot of sense, and I think that we should all give. I'm a big Kropotkin fan. If we're just talking philosophically, like I'm an anarchist. Like I think we should all give what we can and take what we need, like as a society. Like, I'm a macro, and I live that way. I give what I can. I care if I can carry something or reach something or do something better, and I also ask for what I need from people that can do things better than me. Can you write this? My handwriting's terrible. I ask people for what I need, and I give them what I can offer. Okay, that was a lot. But
can I take a quick picture, real
Sure.
quick? Can you guys go over there behind him so I can see Nancy?
What?
And, yes.